So if we haven't met, I'm Jennifer Elliott and welcome to Yin. So today's Yin practice is going to be on the kidney and urinary bladder meridian lines. What that means to you is we're going to move into inner thighs and we'll do some twists and back bends. So that's kind of where we're going. I'm going to start in a reclined butterfly. So the way I'm going to do my reclined butterfly is I'm going to take a block and I'm going to put a bolster on top of that. So again, it's really target area, less about specific pose. So if you don't choose to do a butterfly like this, no big deal. I'm going to put a blanket underneath me because that just feels nice and cozy. Okay, so my reclined butterfly, I'm going to sit close to the bolster. I've got some elevation. My legs are in butterfly. And then I'm going to lie back. Now, this could feel a bit extreme on the lower back, especially depending on what prop you have underneath you. Some of you may choose to be flat on your back and instead put the props under your knees. Or last week, or if you were here on Friday, I put the prop under my feet. So your version of a reclined butterfly. And I'm going to use a timer on my phone, Insight Timer, and that'll just give us a nice bell sound. Okay. We'll be here for 4 minutes. Just take the arms out to the sides. Open the palms. Let the eyes close. Take a few moments just to really drop down into the body. So as we affect the kidney and urinary bladder meridian lines, what those represent is we're moving from a place of fear more to a place of wisdom. So you may notice things that rise up in you like anxieties or fears or thoughts. And those are natural, but what we're hoping to do today is sort of allow those to dissolve a little bit, dilute. And so we sort of dissolve them into wisdom. You know, fear can be good. It can keep you alert. It can keep you prepared. But what we want to learn is not everything requires the same reaction. We want to learn to be able to step back and be a little bit more observant versus reactive. So in these moments, you're just checking in. Are there areas in the body that don't quite feel relaxed? A lot of times the areas that tense when we're under stress are the neck, the jaw, the lower back, the hands. So just scan those areas and see if you can soften them. And then as we use gravity to drop our weight into the earth, allow the breath to animate your pose. So the weight of the body just draws down, but the breath almost fights that gravity. You can find the expansion upwards on inhale, moving out of that gravity, out of that grounding. And on the exhale, just giving in more deeply to that sense of grounding. So inhale, we create space, lightness. Exhale, we relax into that new space. We feel heavy and relaxed. So just take a few natural breaths. And start to train your observer mind. So you may or may not feel or notice the things that I point out, but they're really just suggestions for you to observe what's happening within your own body, your own mind. So now that we've been here, we've got about a minute left. Is there anything else that you could release into a little bit more? And just your last few breaths. Okay. So from here, use your hand strength to guide the legs together. After a pose, we always take a moment to rebound to sort of allow the effects to settle in. Reach the arms overhead, give yourself a nice good stretch, maybe yawn. And then you're gonna roll to the right. So roll to your right, press yourself upright. Now we're pretty much gonna keep the feet as we are, but I'm gonna turn just so that you can see what we're doing. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna turn my bolster because I think that'll be better. So I've rolled to the right, I've come out of that last pose, and my legs are what we call deer. So deer is kind of like, you could imagine like a figure four or half pigeon, and then the other leg is back like a half reclined hero. So once we were in that pose, we rolled to the side, we press up, the legs are naturally staggered. And then I've got my bolster, I've just removed the block from underneath it. This could be a couple of blankets, I've even done this with a couple of blocks. But I'm essentially going to turn to face the prop, whatever we've chosen. The legs are staggered. How much will depend on you in a moment. And I'm going to pull my chest towards the back of the mat, whatever that prop is. And then slowly set yourself down onto the prop, or you can come on your forearms. Let's say you don't have a prop or it doesn't make sense to lie all the way down. So you can see it's this gentle twist. Oh, nice little pop there. So opening up the right ribs, letting the left ribs relax. If you have lower back sensitivities, you might stack your knees a little closer together. If you feel that you want to get into this top thigh already, you can keep the knees bent, but stagger this top leg back. So you can kind of explore. Knees together or knees apart. And then as you fold, you might stay on your forearms like I am at the moment in a Sphinx-like version, or you can place your right ear down on your palm. Okay. Knees together or staggered. I'll set our timer. So again, it's more about target area, less about specific pose. And so if this is not feeling good for you, maybe it doesn't feel good to be on the belly, or the props that you have aren't quite working, any twist is fine. So you can always choose a different twist. And I'm just sort of demoing a sort of a simple spinal twist with the knees stacked. So this is a nice alternative. And then from here, oftentimes when we're in these poses, what can feel uncomfortable is our ability to breathe, because we sort of imagine ourselves just breathing through the chest, through the ribs, through the belly, and now we're almost constricting those. But what we don't realize, or what we forget, is that our back ribs hold so much capacity for the lungs to breathe. So imagine that your back ribs are breathing, you're lifting up through the back body. So each inhale, you're just feeling the space through the back. And each exhale, you're letting the body sink and surrender into your arms. About halfway through this pose. So a few options. Some of you might turn your head the other direction. For me, that's a bit too much, so I'm going to leave mine where it was. You might extend the top leg back more, or realize that's too much and restack. But once you find your position, close the eyes, really commit. And feel the breath moving into the back ribs. And see if you can fill out the whole back rib. So the side ribs widen. The shoulder blades widen. And feel on each exhale a deeper sense of letting go. I'm so fascinated with the breath. Our ability to breathe is really just our ability to receive. Our ability to receive is our ability to be open, not contracted. And it's really about giving. So the more that you give, the more that you give back. So the more exhale, carbon dioxide, sort of forcing of the prana out, the more space you have to refill the lungs and receive on your next inhale. You've got just a couple left. All right, so you're going to slide your hands back if you're in my deer twist. Press yourself up, and then all you're going to do is turn so that your back is to whatever props you have, and then keep rotating so that your left hip is against your bolster of props. Your legs are staggered, any amount for you. Place your hands on either side of the prop behind you. Pull your chest forward, get as long as you can, and then slowly settle yourself in. So take a little time here. Again, knees can stay more stacked, or if you're able to get into a little bit of the back bending version, take that top right leg and scissor it back. We're here for the same 3 minutes. Most likely you're putting your left ear down on the prop if you've decided to turn that way. Again, if this twist is not for you, take a traditional twist or your own version. Let the back ribs breathe on this one as well. As you're starting to learn to be the observer of your thoughts. I always play this game with myself. It just is a nice sort of meditation game where I play future, past, or present. So you have a thought, you recognize, oh, there's a thought again. And then you identify, where are you in that thought? Are you remembering? So that's the past. Are you planning? That's the future. If it's the present, it's usually the breath or just you sort of questioning your own thought. But obviously we want to get to the present as much as we can, but you'll start to recognize how often you're not there, how often you're somewhere else in the future, in the past. We've got about 1.5 minutes left. Make any changes you need. Let's commit to this final 90 seconds of observing those thoughts. And the last 5 breaths. Slide your hands back. Press yourself upright and turn. Okay, so when you come up, we're going to come to our back, but I'm going to demo first. So I'm going to use my bolster on the right side. I find that I like this. You don't have to. I'm going to leave my blanket just because it's nice and cozy. So what we'll do in a moment is we'll find Happy Baby. Now, if Happy Baby's not for you, you can find a wall, set your feet on the wall in kind of that same Malasana style. But we'll do Happy Baby, and then we'll lower one leg down so it's a half happy baby. And you can stay like this and draw the leg down, but if you have props near you, sometimes I find that it gets really nice to drop the thigh on the prop. So again, this is just a suggestion, but you might find that it feels really nice for you. So we'll start first with happy baby. Don't worry, that won't be a 4-minute hold. If happy baby's not for you, find yourself at the wall, or you can even take malasana. So let me get our time first. Malasana, if you'd rather do that, you can come up into a squat. So again, our target is inner thighs. It doesn't have to be happy baby. Okay, time is going. 2 minutes. And so again, we're working through those kidney and urinary bladder meridian lines that are on the inner thighs, one of them anyway. And I was thinking about this because we're moving from resolving fear into wisdom. I was thinking about when I'm observing my thoughts, and I tend to be, well, it depends on the time of day. I think at night before I go to bed, I'm a lot in the future. I tend to plan a lot as I'm trying to go to sleep, organize my next day, my week, my life. And so I notice a lot of those are what if questions, right? What if this happens? Should I do that? Should I do that? So it's almost fear-based a lot of times when we're in the future. A lot of what we're trying to learn in yoga is to be uncomfortable with the unknown. A lot of what we become afraid of is fear of what we don't know. And so how do we resolve that? Well, one of the ways we resolve that is we learn to be in the present. In the present, those things aren't happening, so it doesn't really matter. Right now, all we have is body and breath and the experiences of this moment. So it doesn't matter, at least right now, what comes later. All right, got 30 more seconds here. Okay, so we're going to continue to hold the right leg in happy baby, or possibly, if this is okay for you, and set your left foot down. So I like to start with the left knee bent just to make sure I'm feeling okay. And oftentimes I see people, they'll try to straighten or take this right foot out. So even if you have to hold on to the back of the knee or the calf or put a strap around the foot, try to keep your foot directly above your knee. You can press your right thigh bone a little wider and then guide it down. Again, you can rest it here or you can rest it on that prop like I showed you earlier. We're here 2 minutes. If this is not for you, then you can do just do another version of malasana or finding it at the wall. You'll just not switch sides if you change. But again, we're only doing 2 minutes, so not quite as long as some of our other poses. And then if this is feeling reasonable for you, pardon me, you might straighten the left leg out on the floor. Take a little time here, about the next 90 seconds, to just observe your thoughts. And really work on observing without judging. So you're just the witness. You're just labeling, noticing, not getting involved. One more breath or so. All right. Set both of your feet down if you were doing something that had a side, and just give yourself a moment. See how that feels. I can already feel more warmth on that side. I'm going to move my bolster to the left in case I decide to use that. And then if you did that half happy baby, that's what we're going to do. We'll start with happy baby first, and then set your right foot down on the floor. Keep the knee bent, and keep that left leg in your half happy baby. Again, make sure you're not taking the left foot off to the side. We don't want to torque the knee in any way. So really have that nice perpendicular shin, but right over the knee. Okay, 2 minutes. And this round, maybe observe how much time you spend in the past. And a lot of the things that are in our past that are memories, they're there to teach us something that we learned from whatever that experience was. And sometimes we hold on to the whole experience. We don't fully digest it. And it sort of backs us up, maybe physically or emotionally. And so if you find that your thoughts are a lot with the past and you're worrying or doing the what ifs, or you're sort of not fully processing whatever that is, allow yourself to digest it. With all digesting, there's parts that we keep. There's something good that came from that. And the rest is waste. Just let it go. So for the last bit of this pose, just allow yourself to observe those thoughts. Okay, so go ahead and set your feet down onto the ground, maybe feet wide, knees falling into one another. Just feel the effects of your pose. And I'm going to demo the alternate version of this next pose in case you don't feel like leaving your back. We're going to move into some dragon lunges. So if you don't want to be on your knees, I will give you some props for that. But if you prefer to stay on your back, you can lift your hips and take that bolster or prop underneath you. Pull one knee and take it over to the side. So if you don't want to do the dragons, this is a nice alternative. But otherwise, I'm going to keep the blanket on the mat. I'm actually going to use the bolster just because I have it and I always feel like why not, but it's up to you. And I'm going to take dragon lunges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bolster. So my knee right now is on the blanket, but I'm going to shift a little forward. So it's almost, you can't really see, but my knee is slightly hovering. I'm not like holding it. It just isn't completely on the blanket because this bolster is helping me. And sometimes that's also nice for knee stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my props. My hands could also be on the floor on the inside of this leg. And we're going to be here 4 minutes, so don't jump in right away. So I can show you. You don't have to be here longer than you need. So you might stay all the way up. At some point, some of you may drop down to forearms or palms. Turning the leg out. Notice that I'm letting my toes go with me, so it's happening from the hip. Pressing away. Possibly reaching for the back ankle, which I promise this is so much nicer when you have a bolster or a prop underneath. So doesn't mean you have to do all 4 of those layers, but those are where I'll suggest that you might go. So choose your pose. I'm going to start the timer, 4 minutes. Dragon lunge, any version of it. So I gave you those 4 as options. You might stay in one section of it and then just maintain that. Get yourself set. And generally, pretty much all lunges, we want the knee to stack over the ankle. Now, there are some yin versions where the knee goes way past so you can get into the calf and the Achilles. I'm particular on those because I can't really see everyone and help you with that. But just we want to remember that the weight is in the hips. We don't want to feel this ever in the knee for any reason. And let's start to really employ the breath. So before I just allowed you, or not allowed, that sounds silly. I was mentioning that you should observe it. Maybe now we'll count the breath. And so try to keep your inhale and your exhale level. So I like to breathe in through the nose for 4 and out for 4. About 1.5 minutes in. And as you're breathing, notice any motivation for movement. Some of you will choose to stay in your pose the whole 4 minutes. Some of you will add these little options on. And sometimes we move because we're uncomfortable, right? It's fidgety. It's hard to sort of stay present in our body. Sometimes we feel like we're going to jump out of our skin. We have such nervous energy. And then other times we want to move because we're ready to move on. We're ready to drop in deeper. So we're approaching our last 90 seconds. Consider committing to whatever you're in. I wasn't counting my breath, but I was just sort of observing, and I was noticing taking very big, long inhales, but kind of short exhales, which is pretty common. And usually when we're still in that stress mode, fight or flight, our inhales, right, that's what we hold on to, but we don't fully let the exhales go. And so if you find that you're in that same place, don't worry so much about the inhale. It'll happen on its own. Let the exhale be where you put your focus. Less than 30 seconds. Okay, very gently come out of your pose and rebound in a way that feels good for you. So it could just be sitting on your feet. It could be child's pose. I'm going to hinge back and give my front hamstrings a little bit of a rest here. So just take a moment and let your body receive the benefits of that last pose. We'll do the other side. I'm just going to move my mat to face the other direction, but we're essentially just doing the same thing on the left. So do whichever version was working for you. Sides are different. So if you have a knee thing on this side, it's not really the best pose, then take the one on your back. Okay, 4 minutes, here we go. So we're really balanced in this meridian pair. I already said it sort of leads us to wisdom. but it also leads us to feeling at home in the body. When we aren't balanced in the system, we might feel anxious or depressed. We might be sick a lot or have immune disorders. A lot of that is just from that fight, flight, or freeze always being on. If those things are good for short term, long term, it becomes a whole other animal. We're approaching about halfway through our pose. Again, in a moment, we'll be approaching our last 90 seconds. So let's really try to just commit whatever option of the pose you're taking. Let's try this last 90 seconds just to commit to it. Breathe into it. Approaching our last one. So everybody's parameters, where you are in the spectrum of things giving you stress, is different. Told the story a bunch. You may or may not have heard it. But one of our teachers, her husband is a race car driver and does all those commercials you see on the Super Bowl where the cars drive all fast and park. And they had some contest years ago where some woman ended up winning the contest and she was able to drive the racetrack. And they put this little electrode thing on her head and she was going maybe 80 miles an hour and it's all lighting up and she was really stressed out. It was just terrifying for her to go around this track. And then my friend's husband, who's the professional race car driver, they put the thing on him and he's going, 200 miles an hour around the track. No brainwaves, just calm as can be, meditative state. Go ahead and release. Take your rebound pose. And so you may notice the same thing. In that case, that was something he did. So it became very meditative to him. He sort of went into his zone. But sometimes we can be that too, right? We sort of find that eye of the storm. We almost feel more calm when things are chaotic around us. Go ahead and back out of your rebound. I'll demo our next pose. So this will be a little different for everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a block behind my bolster like I did in the very beginning. We're essentially going to do deer recline, and it's to access the top thigh. So watch first, and then I'll give you some options if you feel that's not for you. So I'm throwing this blanket down. It's nice on my feet, and it just feels good to have a little padding underneath. And remember, the deer legs were staggered. So one knee is bent so that the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. The other knee is bent so the shin is back sideways. So in this case, I'm in my deer pose. I'm scooching up to the bolster, so I'm quite close. and it might want to access this top left thigh. So I'm going to lift the hips a little bit, set them down. Honestly, I feel it here. Or I can start to lie down. Okay, so we can be here to access the top thigh. Now for me, my low back and knee really appreciate this height of the bolster. It can be done without, but it just really depends on how you're feeling in your body. If this is not for you, you could lie flatter with a prop, windshield wiper the legs, and stretch that top thigh. Or if you're really gung-ho, you can take one leg up the wall, bring the other leg out, and you can move into King Arthur. So these are some other options for you as well. Our target is the top thigh. Okay. I'm deciding. I think we're going to stay 4 minutes, so this will help us with our time here. Our ability to be present. You can have either arms by the sides, you can grab elbows overhead if you'd like to get a little bit more length. And sometimes there may be poses where none of the options I give you really feel right. And so in those moments, just listen within. Maybe it's just a child's pose or legs up the wall, or maybe you just intuitively find your own other hip opener that makes sense for you. I remember one time back when I used to be a cyclist, I used to ride bikes a lot, and I had ridden, I don't know, quite a bit, like maybe a 50, 60-mile ride. And I came to a class right after. Every single muscle group they stretched was opposite of the one I needed. It was just more of the same. And so I felt bad, but I ended up having to do something slightly different the whole time because I just couldn't bend that way anymore. So everything I give is a suggestion. All right, we're already halfway through our pose. If you want to go deeper, you can either just continue to commit to your stillness or maybe you remove props. I don't know about you, but my belly's doing a lot of gurgling. And some of that is because we're getting into the hip flexors and the top thighs, which sort of run under all the internal organs. But also when we move away from that stress response and more into rest and digest, our blood moves to the belly and kind of moves into housekeeping activities. And that's sort of aiding in digestion and healing the body, sort of boosting the immune system. So if you find that when you're in practice you get cold, you start to feel or hear your stomach move a little bit more, those are good signs. That means that internally you're shifting. We've got less than a minute left. All right. So the way I'm going to come out of this is I'm going to hold the edges of my mat, use my elbows to lightly press myself up. And you kind of end up leaning to the right as you lift up. And then I'm going to bring myself out. Sometimes what you feel is maybe the ankle or the calf or the shin need a little bit of movement, little circulation, so feel free to do that. And then we're going to move to the other side. So again, deer legs or whatever you've made sense for you. Lift your hips and then possibly lower back. All right, we're on those same 4 minutes. And then this one, let's see if we can really work on those long exhales. We'll start to move the breath in and out through the nose. And take an inhale through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold the breath. Exhale out the nose, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 6. Inhale 4. Exhale 6 or 8. Continue on your own. Now eventually the breath count will just fade away and just sort of the feeling, that intuitive feeling of the exhales being longer will remain. So continue on your own. You're halfway through this pose if you need to make changes. But just let the effort, let the will of the mind fade away. Let the intuition in the body take over. Your last few cycles of breath. All right. So slowly make your way out of your pose. Take your time. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my strap and my bolster. So this pose, I love this with the bolster. This will be new for some of you, and you may not like it, and that's okay. So It's one of my favorites, but your back may be over sort of the back bendy version part. So if you don't want the bolster or prop underneath, you just skip it. So let's say you don't have a bolster. This could be 2 blocks next to each other. It could be a folded blanket. I'll demo and then you can decide for you. So essentially what we'll do in a moment is we'll lift our hips, slide the prop underneath you if you've decided to take that. So sort of continuing the path we've been doing. And then I'm going to take a strap over the right foot. So it's my normal sort of stretching the hamstrings, but I'm on a lift and I'm straightening out this leg. So what I like about this is I get into the hip flexor as well. But if your low back is sensitive, you just skip this and you do the same thing but flat on the ground. We'll end up going to the side and crossing over on this prop. So you'll kind of want to keep that in mind. And if partway through you're like, nope, not for me, then just remove this prop. Okay, so decide for you. It's Supta Padangusthasana, or I always call this final stretch because I do it a lot at the end of class, which is accurate for today as well. We're not going to be here those 4-minute holds. I think we just have time for maybe 1.5 minutes. So right leg in the air, however you're doing it, flat on the back or on your prop. Okay. And then I just happen to already have a loop in my strap. And so I like to slide my elbows into that, palms in prayer, and then it just allows me to relax my arms. I don't know about you, but my hands can get arthritic sometimes and holding the strap does not feel comfy. So I'm always looking for the way that it can be a bit more passive. Our target areas are the right hamstrings. And for some of you, also the top of the left thigh. A couple more breaths. All right, so open your leg to the right. Now, important, I'm on a prop, and even if you're not, sometimes people will try to really drop that leg right and the left hip will roll up off the ground of the prop. So the left hip is going to stay level. You can put your left hand on your left hip to remind it to stay there. And so this right leg, I don't know, that's what, several feet off the ground for me. It's pretty high. So it's not about getting to the ground. Just stretch the inner thigh, but keeping that left leg nice and heavy. And since I already have this loop in my strap, I'm going to put it in my left hand over my left wrist. I'm going to drape my left arm around my head. And it just sort of helps me get into that left side body a bit more. So again, these are just offerings. There you are, continuing to breathe. Okay, well that's nice. The timer doesn't look like it's working, so let's bring our leg up. Cross it over into the twist. And depending on, oh, there we are. Okay, good, it was just hidden. Cross the leg over and take any version of a twist. So again, if you're on this prop, you may have to shimmy over a little bit so that you don't fall off. If this isn't for you, any version of twist is fine. And again, this top leg is sort of lifted. It's not all the way to the ground. So in your twist, have your leg, oh good, yeah, I see some of you have a block under the calf. That's nice. I have my foot on the wall. If you're there with your partner or your friend and you don't mind, you can put your foot on their hip. Your last couple breaths. All right. Bring your leg up. Set it down on the ground. Already I notice a huge change between sides. And for me, usually that left side is a little anxious to get moving. So let's go ahead and do the left side. Start with the hamstrings. Really relax the jaw. Reading an article right now that a lot of people are losing the enamel on their teeth. Their dentists are telling them that they're grinding their teeth. We tend to do that when we're in stress. And so as many times as you can, release the jaw. I offer to yawn a lot. All of that sort of stretches the ligament of the jaw, kind of like we're stretching the tissues of the legs here. It just releases that grip. So we're not as prone to grind or to tense at the jaw. Okay, open to the left, whatever that looks like for you. Or target is inner thigh if you need to make any changes. About 5 breaths left. Bring your leg up, and I just shimmied a little left on my bolster so I have plenty of room to finish by crossing the the left leg all the way over the body. Final posture. So again, some of you can put a block or prop under the calf or the foot, anything that's going to make this a bit more restorative for you. Okay, bring your leg up. Now, a few options. At the very least, you can bend your knees, peel your hips up slowly, slide your bolster down, and then it's under your knees for Shavasana. Now, what I'm going to do, because we've done a lot of sort of back bends, and so sometimes even when we have the best intentions, our low back might feel tender. So I'm actually going to lift my bolster up. So I'm going to put my blocks flat under my bolster. This is just what the second height. And I'm going to take a blanket for under my belly. This could also be legs up the wall if you have a wall. But just elevating the legs in this way, even with just a bolster under the knees or a rolled blanket, releases the lower back. I'm going to put that blanket over the pelvis. Any kind of a weight also helps your body relax. And I'll set the timer one last time so we can fully relax into our Shavasana. We'll be here 3 minutes. Go ahead and settle yourself in. Now we can fully rest and digest all that we've done. Allow the breath to take on its own pattern. And we have these energy lines along the body. You can imagine these nadis, these little rivers that are running through the body. Do you notice now the feeling of being more free, the fluid, the energy traveling around the body, unobstructed? Can you feel that gentle circulation now of your chi, of your prana, free? Begin to move fingers and toes. Send the arms overhead, yawn, bend your knees. Roll to the right. Now with eyes closed, slowly press upright to your final seat. Hands to your heart in gratitude for all the work your body has done. Lift your heart, bow your head. Namaste.